There's a moment near the end of the very first episode of Avatar, The Last Airbender, where two siblings cut a boy out of a glacier, and the first thing those eyes ever do on screen is glow. Not open softly, not blink, glow. Pure white, blowing back the snow around him, lifting him up out of the ice on a column of light that punches through a frozen ceiling thicker than any 12-year-old should be able to move. He has not spoken yet. The show has barely begun. And it has already shown you in maybe 20 seconds of animation the single most powerful and most misunderstood thing in this entire world. It's called the Avatar state, and almost everything people remember about it is only the surface. Tonight on Ember, we're going through all of it. Every trigger, every cost, every time it saved him, every time it nearly ended the cycle. So get comfortable, turn the lights down, and if you haven't subscribed yet, it really does help us keep making these. To start with the simplest version of the answer, the one you can put in a single breath, the Avatar state is the defense mechanism of a 1,000-year-long lineage. It is the moment when the current Avatar, whoever they happen to be in this generation, stops being only themselves and becomes the entire line stretching back behind them. Every past life, every previous body, every old skill set folded forward into the present. The show describes it through the lips of Avatar Roku in particular as the ability to channel the bending knowledge and the spiritual experience of every Avatar who has ever lived. In practice, on screen, you see that channeling expressed as a kind of luminous override. The eyes go white, the arrow tattoos on Aang go white as well. His air bending, his earth bending, his water bending, and eventually his fire bending begin to operate at scales they could never reach when he is just a boy. Stone, sea, wind, flame, all of them respond to him not as a child but as a chorus. That word, chorus, is worth holding on to because it is the closest thing the show offers to an emotional explanation of the state. When Aang is in it, you sometimes hear the voice that comes out of him layered with another voice. Deeper, older, slightly out of time with itself. That is the show telling you, without ever needing dialogue, that the boy is not alone in his body. He is being spoken through. He is, briefly, a vehicle for everything the world has remembered about being the Avatar. And the cost of that, as you learn over 3 books of television, is enormous. The show is careful, almost stingy, about how often it lets you see this. If you go back and count the full, uncontrolled Avatar state, the eyes lit and the power unleashed occurs far fewer times than the show's reputation would have you believe. There are perhaps a handful of full activations across all 3 books, and only one of them, in the very last episode, is anything close to a sustained conscious one. The rest are flares, they are emergencies, they are the lineage interrupting the boy because the boy alone cannot handle what is in front of him. And almost every single time after the light fades, Aang is shaken. He apologizes, he looks at the damage. The show is telling you every time that this is not a power he enjoys. The cleanest in show description of the rules comes early in the 2nd book, in the very first episode of that book, which is itself titled The Avatar State. Roku, appearing to Aang during a forced meditation, explains the basic mechanic. In the Avatar state, the current Avatar is at their most powerful, but also at their most vulnerable. If the Avatar is killed while in the state, the reincarnation cycle ends. The lineage breaks. The Avatar, as a concept threaded through time, ceases to exist. There will be no next one. The chorus simply stops. That single piece of dialogue is, I think, the most quietly horrifying thing in the entire series, because it tells you that the strongest move on the board is also the move that can lose the game forever. And once you know it, every later use of the state plays differently. You start watching with a sort of held breath. The state, in the show's own logic, also exists on a spectrum. There is the unconscious flare, where Aang's emotional system trips the lineage on his behalf, almost like a circuit breaker, and he has very little say in what happens afterward. Then there is the partial entry, where his eyes glow and he taps a specific past life for a specific skill, but he is more or less still himself underneath. Then there is the fully integrated, mastered Avatar state, the version where the Avatar can summon the lineage at will, hold it, direct it, and step out of it again on their own terms. Aang does not reach that version until the final stretch of the 3rd book. And even then, the show is careful about how much it lets him do. What I want to walk through tonight, slowly, the way these things deserve to be walked through, is the entire arc of that mechanic, how it first appears, what it costs the boy, what the spiritual framework around it actually says, where the chakras come in, and why an old guru in a mountaintop sanctuary becomes one of the most important characters in the whole show despite barely being on screen for a single episode. We will look at how the state is broken, what blocks it, what unblocks it, what almost kills it forever, and what it finally settles into by the end of the war. We will look at the previous avatars the show shows us using it: Roku and his volcano, Kyoshi on her cliff, the brief glimpses of Kuruk and Yang Chen, and we will keep the things the show actually tells us separate from the things the comics or the sequel series add later. Wherever we cross that line, I will tell you we are crossing it. That matters. Before any of that though, it helps to sit for a moment with the idea itself, because the Avatar state is one of the rare pieces of animated fantasy world building that is genuinely original. There is no exact equivalent in older fantasy. It is not a transformation in the way a werewolf is a transformation, because the Avatar's body does not change, only the eyes and the tattoos. It is not possession in the horror sense, because the people speaking through Aang are not invaders. They are him, his earlier selves, the line he belongs to. It is closer to something out of certain Buddhist or Hindu traditions of inherited consciousness. The idea that you are not only the person you are right now, but a continuation of every life you have lived before, and that under sufficient pressure, those lives can come forward and act through you. The show is upfront about being inspired by Asian spiritual traditions, and the Avatar state is one of the clearest places where that influence shows up directly in the mechanics, not just in the costuming or the architecture. It is also, importantly, framed as a burden rather than a gift. When the boy is told what the state is, his reaction is not excitement. It is fear. He fears it from the moment he learns its rules, and he keeps fearing it even after he has mastered it. He fears what he does in it. He fears what it costs the people around him. He fears that the lineage, the chorus inside him, knows things he does not want to know, and is willing to do things he does not want to do. By the end of the show, he has made his peace with the state, but it is the peace of someone who has decided to carry something heavy, not someone who has decided it was never heavy at all. That distinction is, I think, what makes the Avatar state one of the great pieces of writing in this show, and what we are going to spend the next few hours unpacking. So let us go back to that glacier. The first episode of the show is called The Boy in the Iceberg, and the cold open of the entire series is a teenage girl and her older brother out on a small canoe trying to catch a fish in the freezing waters off the southern tip of the world. They get into an argument, the canoe gets crushed between two ice floes, they end up stranded on a drifting piece of pack ice, and they spot something underneath them, a great dark shape inside a glassy iceberg. And at the center of the shape is the silhouette of a boy with his eyes closed and his arms crossed. And beside him, faintly visible, the bulk of a large flying creature. The girl, Katara, hits the ice in frustration, accidentally cracks it with the waterbending she has been suppressing all her life, and the iceberg splits open. From the top of it, blue light begins to pour upward, a single column reaching into the sky. That column is the show telling the audience and telling the world of the show that the Avatar has returned. It is also the show telling you what the Avatar state looks like before you have even been told the words. You see the glow before you ever hear the term. When the siblings cut the boy out, his eyes open white, his tattoos light up the same white, and a brief shockwave moves outward. He floats. He is not, in that moment, 12 years old. He is the cumulative weight of 100 years of being frozen, a sudden release of every survival instinct his body had been clinging to, and underneath all of that, the lineage of the Avatar waking up after a century of dormancy. And then, almost immediately, the glow fades. The boy collapses into Katara's arms, and the very first thing he does, once he can talk, is ask if she wants to go penguin sledding. It is one of the show's quietest, smartest jokes. The most powerful entity in the world looks like a child because he is one. This pattern, the flare, and then the boy, is going to define the entire first book. You learn, retrospectively, that this is how the state has been protecting him for 100 years. He had run away from his temple as a child after the monks told him he was the Avatar, taken his sky bison Appa with him, gotten caught in a storm out at sea, and as he and Appa began to drown beneath the waves, the Avatar state activated as a final survival reflex. It froze him in a sphere of ice, slowed his aging to nothing, and kept him alive at the bottom of the world for the entire span of a war he should have been there to prevent. That is the show's first major use of the state's primary function, which is preservation. The state is older than Aang. It is patient. It will keep him alive even when he is in no condition to make decisions for himself, and it will keep him alive for as long as it has to. The implications of that, once you sit with them, are heavy. The state did not bring him back when the war started. It did not wake him to fight at the beginning of the 100-Year War. It just held him under the ice, like a candle in a sealed jar, until two siblings on a small canoe found him a century later. The show never tells you exactly why the timing worked out the way it did. There are interpretations, and we will get to them. The reading the show seems to prefer is that the world brought him back when it needed him, not a moment before, and that the state, in some way that is not fully spelled out, was waiting for the right moment to release him. There are fans who argue, going further, that some other piece of the spirit world was involved in keeping him on ice, that the Avatar state was being assisted by something larger, a kind of cosmic timekeeping. That is interpretation, not canon, and the show is careful never to confirm it. What is canon is that the state can preserve a living avatar indefinitely, and that the price for that preservation is that the world keeps turning without you while you sleep. That alone changes how you should watch the first half of the first book. Every time Aang is being a child, sliding down the back of an otter penguin, riding a giant koi fish, building forts in a Fire Nation prison, you are watching someone who is, biologically, 12. But who has been frozen in time for 100 years and is now being asked to inherit the responsibility of ending a war. The Avatar state did its job, which was to keep him alive. It cannot do the next part for him. The next part is something he is going to have to do, slowly and with help. The second time you see the state on screen is more emotionally direct, and it sets the template for how the show is going to use it for most of the first book. It happens in the third episode, The Southern Air Temple, when Aang, Katara, and Sokka travel to the place where Aang grew up, the temple where the air nomads lived. He has not been told yet what happened to his people. He still thinks, at least on some level, that the monks who raised him are going to be there waiting. They are not. The temple is empty. The monks are bones. He finds the body of Gyatso, his teacher, the closest thing he had to a father, surrounded by the armor of Fire Nation soldiers who clearly died with him in a final battle. The show, mercifully, does not linger on the corpses. It only needs to show you that this is what happened, that the air nomads were systematically destroyed by Fire Lord Sazan's campaign, and that the world Aang has woken into is a world in which his entire culture has been annihilated, and the Avatar state, in response to that grief, ignites. His tattoos and eyes go white. The wind around him picks up. The other monks of the temple, who are not air nomads but a flock of winged lemurs and other small creatures, scatter. Katara, in one of the most important moments of her early arc, does something almost no one else would have thought to do. She does not try to stop the state with force. She does not try to reason with him. She simply gets close, embraces him from behind, and tells him she is still there. She tells him she lost her mother too, that they are family now, that he is not alone. And the state, which is overwhelming, which would, in another show, have been a weapon to point at the audience, calms. The light fades, he sits down in the wreckage of his old home, and he weeps. The show is teaching you, in that sequence, one of the most important things you will need to understand about the Avatar state across all 3 books. The trigger is not anger by itself, not fear by itself, not strength. The trigger is grief. The trigger is helplessness. The trigger is the moment when the boy hits a wall that the boy alone cannot climb. And the way to bring him back in the early books is not to overpower the state, but to remind him that he is not alone. Connection lowers the state. Isolation raises it. Every later activation will follow that same emotional grammar in some form. Notice, too, how visually controlled the activation is in this scene. He does not fly off. He does not destroy the temple. The state here is less an attack and more a cry. You can read it almost as a kind of mourning ritual being conducted by the Lineage on his behalf. The chorus inside him saying, with the only voice they have, that this loss is unbearable. The fact that the only person in the room who can hear that voice is a 14-year-old girl from the Southern Water Tribe is, in its way, a thesis statement for the rest of the series. The Avatar's burden is not carried alone. It is carried by whoever stays in the room with him. A recurring small detail across the first book often gets overlooked, which is that whenever Aang is about to enter the state, Warib, you almost always get a held breath beat first, a moment where the camera lingers on his eyes before they shift. The animators are giving you a chance to see the transition. They want you to register that this is a person, and then a person on the verge of being something else, and then the something else. The show is not pretending that he becomes a new character. It is making the case that an enormous thing comes forward through a small body and then withdraws, and what you are looking at when the dust settles is still just the boy. There is a later episode in the first book called The Storm, and although you do not see the Avatar state trigger on screen in the present timeline, it is in many ways the most important Book 1 episode for understanding what the state is and why Aang carries it the way he does. In flashback, you finally see the day he was told he was the Avatar. You see his teacher, the monk Gyatso, fighting with the other elders about whether to send him away from the temple early so that he can begin training before he is ready. You see the boy overhear that conversation. You see him pack his things in tears. You see him climb onto his sky bison in the middle of a thunderstorm, fly out over the open sea, and lose control as the wind and the rain become too much for them both. You see him fall toward the water, and you see the instinctive flicker of light from his eyes as the cold takes him. That is the moment the Avatar state steps in to save him. It encases him in the iceberg you saw at the start of the series. That single decision made by his earlier self in a moment of panic is the reason the war went the way it did. He was not there to stop Sozin. He was at the bottom of the sea, glowing faintly, asleep. The show in that flashback is doing something more than backstory. It is teaching you why Aang fears the state. The Avatar state is not, in his experience, only a defensive weapon. It is also the thing that took him out of the world for 100 years. It is the thing that made him a stranger in his own century. The first lesson it ever taught him, however unintentionally, was that surrendering to it has consequences he cannot control. Every time you see him hesitate to use it in the rest of the series, you should remember that flashback. He is not just afraid of dying inside it. He is afraid of waking up and finding that everything he loved has ended while he was gone. That arc deepens through the back half of the first book and lands, finally, in the 2-part Book 1 finale called The Siege of the North, an extraordinary stretch of television that does more in 2 episodes to define the cosmic stakes of the Avatar state than any other sequence in the show. Aang and his companions have traveled all the way to the Northern Water Tribe, and a Fire Nation fleet led by Admiral Zhao is besieging the city. Aang has been training in waterbending. The princess of the tribe, Yue, has befriended Sokka. There is also a Fire Nation prince, Zuko, his uncle Iroh, and an old admiral who, you will soon learn, knows things about the spirit world that no Fire Nation officer should know. 2 of those things are koi fish swimming in a small pond in a moonlit oasis behind the palace walls. One white and black, one black and white, moving in a perfect circle around each other. They are not, as Sokka almost says aloud, just koi fish. They are the mortal forms of 2 spirits, the moon and the ocean, who chose to come down from the spirit world long ago to learn what it was like to live and die alongside mortals. The moon spirit, the show implies, is the source of waterbending itself, because it pulls the tides, and the tides pulled the first benders into existence. The ocean is the other half of that pairing, the dark counterpart, the deep. Together, in the language of Chinese cosmology that the show is deliberately drawing on, they are something like Tui and La, push and pull, the small and constant dance that keeps the world's balance turning. Zhao knows this. Zhao has spent years in libraries learning it, and Zhao, in a move the show treats with the gravity it deserves, kills the moon spirit. He pulls it out of the pond in a small leather sack and stabs it. The moon, in the sky above the entire battle, dims to a deep red and begins to die. Waterbending all across the world stops. The defenders of the Northern Water Tribe cannot bend. The Fire Nation breaks through. The city is about to fall. What happens next is the first sustained use of the Avatar state that the show has shown you, and it is unlike anything that comes before or after. Aang, sitting in the small oasis with Katara and the surviving koi, makes a decision. He cannot save the city alone. He is too small, too tired, too uncertain. But there is something at the bottom of the pond that is not too small and not too tired. He wades into the water, allows the lineage to come forward, and lets the ocean spirit, the surviving half of the cosmic pair, merge with him. The Avatar state activates, but it is not the brief flare you have seen before. It does not subside after a few seconds. It expands. He grows. He rises out of the pond as a towering shape of dark water with the koi spirit at its center, lit from inside by the white of his own eyes. And he walks, slowly and unstoppably, through the Fire Nation forces in the streets of the city, sweeping ships off the ice, hurling soldiers back into the sea, sealing the breach. He does not look human. He does not look like a child. He looks for those few minutes like a piece of the spirit world has come down to walk among soldiers, and the soldiers have nowhere left to go. That image, the dark wave with the boy at its center, is the first time the show really makes you understand the scale of what the avatar state can be. It is not just glowing eyes and a stronger punch. At its peak, with the right spiritual alignment, it can let the avatar fuse for a short period with a spirit older than civilization. The show is careful to mark this as exceptional. It is not telling you that Aang can do this whenever he wants. It is telling you that under very specific conditions, with an active spirit willing to share his body, the avatar state becomes the bridge between worlds that the avatar has always in lore been said to be. Meanwhile, Princess Yue, who has been carrying the moon's life inside her since she was a baby because the spirit saved her, gives that life back. She places her hands on the dead body of the moon spirit, the body that had been a koi, and she returns the borrowed light. She dies. The moon comes back. Waterbending returns. The cosmic balance holds. And Aang, walking back into the oasis as the dark spirit lowers him gently into the water, releases the merge, the state fades, and he is once again a small boy collapsed at the edge of a pond with Katara catching him. It is one of the most spiritually dense 40 minutes of television that an American animated series ever produced. And it ends with the most important emotional beat for our purposes tonight, which is not the merge and not the moon's return. It is the conversation Aang has with Avatar Roku afterward, where you start to understand that what he did, although it saved the city, was not free. He let something through him that was not himself. The ocean did not act with restraint, it acted with the force of an ocean. People who were not soldiers were swept away by the same wave that saved the tribe. Aang does not get to claim the victory cleanly. He gets to live with the question of what he did with the Lineage's permission, and that question is going to follow him into the second book. That second book opens, deliberately, with an episode literally titled The Avatar State. The placement is not subtle. The writers want you to know that this book is going to be about the state itself, what it costs, what it teaches, what it asks of him. In that opening episode, Aang is being pressured by an Earth Kingdom general to weaponize the state on demand, the way you would weaponize a piece of artillery to break the Fire Nation's lines. The general arranges a series of crueler and crueler tactics designed to provoke the state, including putting Katara in mortal danger, because he believes that if Aang can be made to flip the switch reliably, the war can be ended in months. Aang resists. He is afraid of what he does in the state. He does not want to be turned into a weapon. He goes into a meditative trance, and Roku appears to him directly to explain the rules. The dialogue in that conversation is more or less the show's formal description of the mechanic, and we should pause on it. Roku explains that the avatar state is a defense mechanism designed to empower the avatar with the skills and knowledge of all the past avatars. The glow is the visible signature of every avatar in the past, lending their energy to the present. In the state, the current avatar is at their most powerful. And then comes the warning, the line that recontextualizes the entire show. If the avatar is killed in the avatar state, the reincarnation cycle will be broken and the avatar will cease to exist. Hold that sentence for a moment, because the show certainly does. The most powerful version of the avatar is also the most fragile version. The same activation that grants you the lineage exposes the lineage to a single terminal vulnerability. You can lose all of it at once. There is no second attempt, no resurrection, no next avatar. The chorus, if it dies while singing, simply stops singing forever. That is the cost the second book is going to spend its entire run circling around, and it is the cost that by the end of the book will nearly come to pass. The general, of course, does not care about this. He believes the state can be controlled, and he is willing to put a child in lethal danger to prove it. The episode ends with Sokka and Katara helping Aang escape from the general's camp, and the 4 young heroes setting off across the Earth Kingdom toward a new teacher. But the question the episode has planted, the question Roku has spoken aloud, is not going to be answered for a long time. Should Aang ever choose deliberately to enter the Avatar state for a fight he can predict, knowing that one stray bolt of fire could end the lineage forever? Or should he keep the state in reserve the way you would keep a single flare in a lifeboat for the worst possible night? The show, slowly, is going to answer that for him through someone else's mouth. The mouth in question belongs to an old man named Pathik, and he is sitting on top of the Eastern Air Temple drinking onion and banana juice when Aang and Appa find him near the end of the second book. The episode is called The Guru, and it is one of those rare episodes that the show packs entirely with quiet, deliberate spiritual instruction. There is no fight in it. There is no chase. There's only an old man, a young avatar, and 7 pools of light. Pathik tells Aang that he was a friend of the air nomad monks before they were killed, that he has been waiting in the temple for the next avatar to come to him, and that he can teach Aang to control the avatar state at will, the way the great avatars before him could. He cannot teach him the bending, he cannot teach him the strategy, but he can teach him the alignment. The framework Pathik introduces is borrowed openly from yogic and Hindu tradition, the system of chakras, the 7 energy points distributed along the spine that the body must keep clear in order for spiritual energy to move through it. The show makes no secret of the borrowing, it treats it with the seriousness of a real teaching. Pathik says that the chakras are pools of swirling energy in the body, and that each one can be blocked by a specific emotional knot, and that the blockages can be cleared, one, by acknowledging the truth that has been buried under them. To master the avatar state in this framework is to clear all 7 in order, so that the energy that the lineage wants to pour through the avatar can pass cleanly from the base of the spine up to the crown of the head and out into the world. The way Pathik walks Aang through it is one of the most genuinely instructive sequences in animated television. He starts with the earth chakra at the base of the spine, blocked by fear, and asks Aang what he is most afraid of. The boy thinks of the Fire Nation, of failing the world, of the people he loves dying because he was not strong enough. The fear is named, and the pool of light clears. He moves to the water chakra in the abdomen, blocked by guilt. He asks Aang what he feels guilty about. Aang remembers running away from the monks, remembers being absent for 100 years while his people died. He grieves, and the second pool clears. The fire chakra in the stomach, blocked by shame. The boy faces his own self-disgust, the moments where he was less than he wanted to be. The third pool clears. The air chakra in the heart, blocked by grief. Here, Aang has to fully face the loss of his people, the genocide of the air nomads, the realization that the family he had is never coming back. He weeps. The pool clears. The sound chakra in the throat, blocked by lies. He has to admit the truths he has been telling himself instead of the real ones. Cleared. The light chakra on the forehead, blocked by illusion, the false separation between self and world. Pathik shows him in a brief vision that the divisions between the 4 nations, between air and water and earth and fire, are themselves an illusion, that all things are one thing wearing different faces. The 6th pool clears, and then they arrive at the 7th, the thought chakra at the crown of the head, blocked by what Pathik calls earthly attachment. This is the one that almost no one talks about cleanly. To open the 7th chakra, Aang has to let go of the thing he loves most. Pathik is explicit. He does not have to stop loving her. He has to release his attachment to her in a way that will allow the cosmic energy to flow through him without being deformed by his need to protect her in particular. The her, of course, is Katara. The boy has been in love with her since the moment she pulled him out of the iceberg. The thought of her dying, the thought of choosing the world over her in any specific scenario is unbearable. Pathik does not tell him love is wrong. He tells him attachment is what the chakra responds to. The distinction matters. Love is letting someone be who they are. Attachment is needing them to remain where you can reach them. The avatar, in the system Pathik is teaching, cannot prioritize one person over the world, because the avatar's job is to keep the world in balance for everyone, including the people he loves and the people he has never met. To master the avatar state at will, Aang must release the attachment that says Katara specifically is more important than the balance. And he tries. He sits cross-legged, he breathes, he pictures her. The show does something extraordinary in this scene, which is that it allows you briefly to see his vision of her riding away from him on the back of a flying creature, smaller and smaller against the sky. He lets her go. The 7th pool, the last of the chakras, begins to open. The avatar state begins to ignite at his crown. You see the column of light start to build above him, and then, in that exact moment, he has a sudden flash of a different vision. Katara, but not flying away, in danger. He sees her, somewhere far below in the world, threatened, frightened, trapped. The vision is not symbolic, it is real. He does not know yet that the vision is happening because Azula has caught up with Katara in the Earth Kingdom city of Ba Sing Se. He only knows that the person he just let go is suddenly in trouble, and the part of him that loves her cannot allow it. He breaks the meditation, he grabs back the attachment, the seventh chakra slams shut. The avatar state, which was about to be fully unlocked for the first time in his life, withdraws. Pathik, when Aang flies off in panic to save her, is gentle but devastating. He warns Aang that by reattaching to her in that way, by choosing her over the cosmic alignment, he has blocked the avatar state, and that he will not be able to enter it again until he can complete the seventh chakra. He has not just delayed the lesson, he has put a lock on the most powerful thing in his arsenal, on the eve of the very fight in which he will most need it. The show does not soften this, it lets it land. The boy flies off to save the girl he loves, and in doing so, hands away his single greatest weapon at the worst possible moment. This is one of the most important plot mechanisms in the entire show, and it is also, I think, one of the most beautifully sad pieces of writing in it. The avatar state in Pathik's framework is not blocked by anger or hatred or fear, it is blocked by love that refuses to let go. The block is not a flaw in the boy, it is what makes him recognizable as a boy. The chorus inside him, the lineage of avatars stretching back into deep time, includes a great many people who learned, eventually, how to release their attachments. Aang has not yet. He is 12. He has just found his only remaining family. Of course, he cannot let go of her on command. But the rules are the rules, and the rules say that until he can, the state will not come. When he arrives at Ba Sing Se with the seventh chakra freshly blocked, he is walking into one of the most important confrontations of his life with the avatar state sealed off. Everyone around him assumes, as the audience does, that if anything goes catastrophically wrong, the state will activate. It cannot. He just gave it up. The episode that follows, the second book's finale, is going to use that locked state as the engine of one of the most devastating endings in animation. That episode is called The Crossroads of Destiny, and although there is a great deal happening in it, on multiple plot threads, the part that matters for us is the catacomb sequence beneath the city. Aang has descended into a network of crystal caves underneath Ba Sing Se. Katara is being held there. Zuko is there, in the middle of his long arc of conflicted loyalty, having just had a long conversation with his uncle about choice. Azula is in the city, manipulating everyone, and her plan is converging on this exact chamber. The two siblings, Zuko and Katara, are imprisoned together in a glowing green cavern, and they actually almost talk to each other honestly for the first time in the show. Then Aang arrives, then Azula arrives, then a fight breaks out that, for a few seconds, looks winnable. It is in that fight, in the green light of the cave, that Aang makes the choice that the rest of the show is going to spend half a book repairing. He sees that Azula has the advantage, that Katara is exhausted, that the moment is desperate. He withdraws into a meditative trance. He lifts up on a column of crystal. His eyes close. His tattoos begin to glow. He is going to try, in spite of everything, to force the avatar state open, to push past the block Pathik warned him about, because he believes he has no other choice. And the show, with terrible honesty, lets him do it. The light begins to grow. The crystals around him crack. The column rises. The state is almost opening. The chakra Pathik told him about is almost surrendering. But almost is not enough, because while he is rising on that column, exposed, eyes going white, defenseless in the way only a fully activated avatar state leaves you defenseless, Azula raises one hand and shoots a single bolt of lightning into his back. That bolt is the single most important moment in the show for our purposes tonight, and it is worth slowing down for it. Lightning, in the firebending of the Avatar world, is described as the cold-blooded fire, the most disciplined and most lethal of all the techniques. It travels along the path of the firebender's chai. It is not aimed the way a fireball is aimed. It is directed like a current down a wire. Azula puts that current straight through Aang in the moment his Avatar state is opening, which means she has done the exact thing Roku warned about in the second book's first episode. She has struck the Avatar in the state. If he dies, the cycle dies with him. If he dies, there is no next Avatar. The lineage, which has been carried forward unbroken for who knows how many thousands of years, ends in a cave under a city that nobody outside the Earth Kingdom even knows is there. He falls, Katara catches him, Iroh appears, fights off Azula long enough for Katara to escape, and helps her get the body out. They get to Appa, they fly out of the catacomb. Katara, having been entrusted with a small vial of water from the Spirit Oasis at the North Pole, uses it, the most spiritually charged water available in the world, to try to heal him. There is a long, silent shot of her hand cupped against his back, the wound in the shape of the lightning entry point, the water glowing faintly. He breathes. He is alive. He is alive, but the state is broken. The block Pathik warned him about has been compounded by the trauma of the lightning strike, which traveled directly through the 7th chakra at the crown of his head. The avatar state is, as far as anyone in the show can tell, gone. Not difficult, not blocked, severed. He spends the early weeks of the 3rd book in a coma, drifting through dreamscapes in the back of a Fire Nation-captured ship with Katara at his side. When he wakes up, his hair has grown out for the first time since he was a child. He has scars he did not have before. And although it takes him a long time to admit it out loud, he can feel that the lineage is not answering when he calls. The 3rd book is a book about that absence as much as it is about the war. There is an episode called The Awakening, the first of the season, in which he is shown trying alone on the deck of a stolen ship to enter the avatar state the old way, by meditation. He cannot. The chorus is not there. He looks down at his hands, the ones that have always carried the lineage at their fingertips, and they are just hands. Quiet, ordinary hands. There's a kind of grief in the way the show frames that moment, a quiet, unspoken acknowledgement that the avatar, as a being threaded through time, has been severed from the boy, and that nobody yet knows whether the severance is repairable. The middle of the 3rd book is mostly a long, almost gentle interlude in which the show puts the avatar state to the side. Aang is training in firebending with Zuko, who has finally crossed over to the heroes. They go on adventures together, they visit old masters, they learn from dragons. The state is not the focus because the show has very deliberately taken the state away from the boy, and is using its absence to make a point that I think people sometimes miss on a first watch. The avatar is not only the state, the avatar is the person who walks the world without it, between flares. Aang spends a great deal of the 3rd book becoming the kind of person who could, in theory, do the job sober without the lineage. That growth, the small work of learning to firebend without burning anyone, of learning to disagree with his friends without breaking, of learning to make decisions without falling back on past lives, is the part of him that the rest of the book is preparing for the final fight. Because there is a final fight coming, there has always been one coming. The show has been building since the very first episode toward a confrontation between Aang and Fire Lord Ozai, the architect of the war, the father of Zuko, the most powerful living firebender, and a man who is, by the time the 3rd book reaches its endgame, planning to use the once-in-a-century arrival of a great comet, Sozon's comet, to amplify his firebending and burn down the entire Earth Kingdom. The comet is named for the firebender who started the war, and its arrival, in canon terms, multiplies the strength of every firebender alive. Ozai's plan is genocide on the same scale Sozon pulled off against the air nomads, but compressed into a single afternoon. Aang has to stop him, and in order to stop him, he's going to need either the avatar state, which he no longer has access to, or some new tool nobody yet knows exists. The show splits his preparation accordingly. He spends the days before the comet trying, in secret and increasingly desperate ways, to reach the lineage. He sits in caves, he meditates, he fasts. Nothing comes. The chorus is silent. And then, on the very last night before the comet arrives, in a quiet stretch of the 4-part finale, he falls asleep on a small island in the middle of the ocean and wakes up to find that the island is moving. It is not an island, it is a lion turtle. An enormous, ancient spirit creature with the body of a turtle and the head of a great lion. Its back so large that a forest can grow on top of it. The lion turtle is one of the oldest beings in the world of Avatar, a survivor from the time before the 4 nations existed. The show has hinted at lion turtles only in passing before this point, in a single offhand reference in the 2nd book, and so when this one rises out of the sea and lowers its great head to speak to a sleeping boy, it feels less like a plot device and more like a piece of cosmology stepping briefly out of myth. The lion turtle is older than the war, older than the nations, older than the Avatar. What it tells him is short, and it is one of the most important pieces of dialogue in the entire show for understanding what bending really is. The lion turtle says, in the careful language of an ancient creature, that in the era before the 4 nations there was no separation between people and the elements, and that humans could bend not by manipulating the world around them, but by reaching inside themselves to find the energy that was already there. To bend another's energy, the lion turtle says, "Your own spirit must be unbendable, or you will be corrupted and destroyed." It places its great forehead against Aang's, gives him the gift of an old form of bending the world has almost entirely forgotten, the technique that will later be called energy bending, and lowers him back to the shore. That gift is the show's way of solving the moral problem it has been building for 2.5 books. Aang, as an air nomad, has been raised to believe that all life is sacred. The other masters he has consulted in the few episodes leading up to this moment have all told him that he must kill Ozai because there is no other way to end the war. Roku tells him to be decisive. Kyoshi tells him that justice and survival demand it. Kuruk tells him that he must shatter Ozai's will. Yang Chen, the most spiritually devout of the past avatars he has met, tells him surprisingly that even air nomad teachings must sometimes give way to duty. The lineage, in a row of 4 ghostly counselors, has unanimously told him that the only way to stop Ozai is to take his life. And Aang cannot. The boy is not built for it. The lineage, in pressuring him to do it, has in his ears become a chorus he does not want to listen to. The lion turtle gives him another option. The lion turtle gives him a way to take Ozai's bending away rather than his life, by reaching into Ozai's spirit and unbending it. That option exists outside the lineage's standard council. It comes from a deeper, older place than the line of avatars. And the existence of that option is the thing that finally allows Aang to walk into the last fight with something to do that does not betray his upbringing. The fight, when it comes, is set under a red sky during the passage of the comet. Ozai, on a great gondola sailing on a stream of fire, is in mid-genocide, burning a corridor of the Earth Kingdom to the ground. Aang catches up with him. The fight that follows is, in technical terms, among the most virtuosic in the show. Ozai is moving with the strength of the comet behind him. Aang is small, fast, evasive, but no closer to the avatar state than he was the day before. He is fighting, in essence, an artillery battery with twigs. And then, midway through the fight, Aang is knocked off balance, sent sliding down a stone outcrop, and at the bottom of that slide, his back, exactly at the point where Azula's lightning entered him almost a year earlier, the point at which the 7th chakra was sealed, slams into a sharp protrusion of rock. The impact is precise. The show, in animation, draws your eye to it. The rock strikes the scar. And in that instant, the block that has been holding the avatar state sealed for the entire 3rd book breaks open. The energy that has been waiting at the base of his spine, at the foot of the column Pathik described, surges up through every chakra in sequence and out of the crown of his head. The avatar state activates, fully, not as a flicker, not as a brief, overpowered punch, but as the deepest, most fully aligned version of the state the show has ever displayed. His eyes go white, his tattoos go white. The 4 elements come to him in a way that they have not come to him in the entire series. He rises into the air on a sphere made of fire and water and earth and air, all 4 spinning around him in concentric rings. Every previous avatar's mastery is pouring through him at once. He is, for those few minutes, the lineage made visible. The visual is one of the most spectacular pieces of animation in the show, but the more important thing about it is what is happening underneath. The avatar state, as Pathik told him, requires a clear path from base to crown. The lightning sealed the path. The rock, by striking the exact same place from the outside in, reopened it. The show is not pretending that this is a metaphor. The chakra system in the show is being treated as physically real. The boy has been reset. The chorus has its instrument back. And the chorus, now that it has the instrument, is furious. What follows, for a sustained sequence, is the lineage trying to use the boy to do the thing the boy did not want to do. Aang, in the avatar state, pursues Ozai, batters him through stone and fire, suspends him in midair, and prepares to deliver the killing blow that Roku and Kyoshi and Kuruk and Yang Chen, in their various ways, have all told him he must deliver. The boy inside the lineage is screaming. The lineage is louder than the boy. The chorus is going to do what the chorus has decided needs to be done. And then, in a moment that I think is one of the most quietly radical pieces of writing in any finale ever, the boy stops. The state holds. The eyes stay white. The hand is raised. The Fire Lord is suspended. The kill is ready. And Aang, somewhere inside the chorus, says no. He releases Ozai. He lowers him to the ground. And he uses the gift the lion turtle gave him instead. He reaches into Ozai's body with the energy-bending technique, locks his own spirit against the Fire Lord's, and unbends Ozai's connection to fire. The light around the two of them flares. Their forms glow against the red sky. And when it is over, Ozai is alive, but he can no longer bend. The war ends because the war's chief weapon ends, and the Avatar has, for the first time in the show, used the state without using it to kill. That is the resolution the show has been building towards since the very first episode. The Avatar state, in the end, is not a kill switch. It is not a weapon of last resort. It is a vehicle through which a person with sufficient clarity can do what a person cannot do alone, and the person inside it gets to choose what the lineage does with their hands. Aang, by choosing not to kill, does not betray the lineage. He completes it. The chorus for the rest of the series is on his side. The state will, from this point forward, be something he can enter at will and exit at will, the way Pathak told him in the second book it could be. Worth dwelling on how rare that ending is in stories of this kind. Most stories that build up a final power for the hero use the final power to deliver the final blow. Avatar refuses. The final power is used to spare. The boy holds the lineage holds the boy, and the world somehow holds both of them. Having sat with Aang's arc through the state, it is worth turning around now and walking back through what the show actually shows us of the Avatar state in earlier generations. Because the past Avatars are not only voices in Aang's head, they are people who lived, who fought, who used the state in their own time, and who left behind in the lineage the record of how each of them did it. The show gives us 4 of them in any depth, 4 faces visible to the boy when he meditates, 4 mentors who appear to him at different points in his arc with very different counsel. Their names, in order of recency, are Roku, Kyoshi, Kuruk, and Yang Chen. Beyond them stretches a line so long that the show, wisely, never tries to put a number on it. Roku, the immediate predecessor, the Fire Nation Avatar who died about a century before Aang's story begins, is the past Avatar Aang spends the most time with. He is the one who delivers the formal rules of the state in the second book. He is the one who appears in dreams and in meditation throughout the entire series. He is, in many ways, the show's spiritual narrator, the voice of the lineage explaining the lineage to its current carrier. The flashback episode that fleshes him out, called The Avatar and the Fire Lord, is one of the most quietly heartbreaking episodes of the second book. It tells the story of Roku and his closest friend, the man who would become Fire Lord Sozin, the architect of the 100-Year War. You learn in that episode that Roku used the Avatar state only a few times in his life that the show chooses to depict, and the most important use of it, the one the writers spend the longest time on, is not a fight. It is an act of mercy that turns into an act of warning. Roku, in his middle age, learns that Sozin has begun colonizing another nation's territory, the early seed of the empire that will eventually conquer the world. He flies to the Fire Nation capital. He confronts Sozin in his own throne room. He activates the Avatar state, ignites the columns of the palace, and shows Sozin what the Avatar can do. He destroys the throne hall around them in a controlled demonstration, then tells his old friend that he will not kill him this time, but that any further imperial expansion will be met with the full weight of the lineage. He leaves Sozin alive. He flies home. And Sozin, who has known him since boyhood, who shared his birthday with him, who once gave him his crown prince's headpiece as a wedding gift, sits among the ruins of his own palace and begins planning. The show, in that sequence, is teaching you something specific about the Avatar state in Roku's hands. Roku uses it as a deterrent. He uses it to make visible what could happen in the hope that visibility will make actuality unnecessary. He does not use it to kill. He spares Sozin, and his sparing in the world the show is building will turn out to be the choice that ends the air nomads. Sozin lives, Roku ages, and when Roku, decades later, is on the volcanic island that is his home in his retirement, the volcano erupts. The Avatar state activates again. Roku is the most powerful Avatar of his generation, and even in the state, he is fighting an active volcano alone at advanced age. He is succeeding. The lava is being held back. The town is being saved. And then Sozin arrives on the back of his own flying creature, sees his old friend exhausted and unguarded, and instead of helping him fight the volcano, leaves him to die in the smoke. Roku dies in the state, on his own island, betrayed by his oldest friend. Because the lineage had just changed, his death triggers the rebirth as the next Avatar, the next air nomad child. In the next generation, the boy we will eventually meet as Aang. But here is the part the show wants you to feel. Roku, in his last conversation with Aang during the second book flashback, says with quiet remorse that his greatest regret is that he was too soft on Sozin. He spared the man the way an avatar is supposed to spare. He extended mercy. And mercy, in this case, allowed an unspeakable thing to happen. Roku, when he counsels Aang in the third book about Ozai, tells him to be decisive because he has lived through what indecision did to the world. He is not telling Aang to be cruel. He is telling him that his mercy, Roku's mercy, was paid for by the air nomads. It is, I think, one of the most morally complicated speeches by a mentor figure in any animated show. Roku is asking the next avatar to learn from his mistake, and the mistake is the act of mercy that, in the moment, was clearly the right thing. The show is treating the avatar state not just as a power, but as the place where decisions like that get made. The lineage is full of advice, and the advice is not always consistent because the avatars who give it are people, and they have lived through different kinds of failures. Kyoshi, the Earth Kingdom Avatar 2 before Aang, is the most physically formidable of the 4 ghosts who counsel him. The show, when she finally appears in person in the second book, paints her as a tall, intimidating, almost monumental figure. Painted face and great fans, hundreds of years old in the rear view of history, dressed in green and gold. The episode in which she possesses her own statue at the boy's invocation and speaks through it is brief, but in it she says, in calm and unflinching terms, that she once split a peninsula off from the mainland to protect a village from a tyrant warlord, and that the act required her to enter the avatar state and pull a chasm in the earth so deep that the village became an island. That is the show's most concrete description of what the avatar state, in the hands of someone who has fully mastered it, can do to the world. Whole peninsulas can be moved. Whole geographies can be rearranged. The state, at full conscious activation, in a fully mastered avatar, scales up to acts that change the maps that future generations will draw. Kyoshi, in that episode, also speaks one of the more chilling lines of the season, telling Aang that, in her view, only justice brings peace. She is not gentle, she is not patient. She is the avatar who used the state as a permanent reshaping of the world, and she stands behind Aang as a counselor who, when consulted, tells him plainly that he should be willing to do whatever is necessary. The show, by giving him this counselor, is making sure he hears the hardest version of the lineage's advice before he is asked to act. Kyoshi's history is fleshed out further in the novels written for the franchise, although those novels exist outside the original animated canon and should not be quoted as if they were the show. What the show itself tells you is enough to make the point. There is a generation, only 2 avatars back, in which the avatar state was used to reshape the coastline of the Earth Kingdom for the sake of a single village. That is the scale the chorus can reach when it speaks through someone willing to let it speak fully. Kuruk, the Water Tribe avatar before Kyoshi, is the one we see least. The show gives him a brief appearance during the 4 avatar sequence in the final book, where Aang seeks counsel from each of them about what to do with Ozai. Kuruk's advice in that scene is to be active and shape his own destiny, to engage with the world rather than wait for it to come to him. The show implies, with a few words and a sad expression, that Kuruk had his own personal tragedy in life, the loss of someone close to him to a spirit, and that his avatar state, in the back half of his life, was haunted by what he had failed to prevent. The supplementary material gives more context on this. The show itself only sketches it. What it confirms is that the lineage's counsel is shaped by the regrets of each avatar in it. Kuruk regrets passivity. Kuruk tells Aang to be active. The chorus, again, is not a single voice. It is a collection of voices, each of which would have made a slightly different decision in your shoes. Yang Chen, the air nomad avatar before Kuruk, is the one whose advice surprises Aang the most, and probably surprised many viewers as well. She is an air nomad, like him. She was raised in the same tradition, in the same monasteries, possibly in the same temples. He has come to her for confirmation of his belief that as an air nomad, he cannot ever take a life, and Yang Chen, instead of confirming it, gently overturns it. She tells him that air nomad teachings, although true for monks, are not always true for the avatar, because the avatar's duty extends beyond the boundaries of any one nation's ethics. She tells him that he, as the avatar, must place the needs of the world ahead of the doctrines of his upbringing, even when those doctrines are the ones that raised him. In the second-to-last episode before the comet, it is a devastating thing for Aang to hear from the air nomad in the chorus. The one past avatar he hoped would back his pacifism is the one telling him to put his pacifism aside. It is also, looking back, one of the most important pieces of misdirection in the show, because what Yang Chen is actually pointing at, although she does not name it directly, is that the avatar is the carrier of a duty older than any specific nation's faith. The lion turtle, in giving Aang energy bending, gives him a way to honor Yang Chen's instruction without taking a life. The two pieces of counsel, Yang Chen's and the lion turtle's, fit together. Yang Chen tells him not to be limited by air nomad doctrine. The lion turtle tells him that a deeper, older form of doctrine exists. Between them, they free him. Watching the four past avatars in succession, Roku, Kyoshi, Kuruk, Yang Chen, you start to understand what the chorus inside the boy actually sounds like. It is not unified. It is not a single voice telling him a single thing. It is the polyphony of a lineage that has lived a great many lives and made a great many decisions, some of which it now regrets. The boy has to listen to all of them, and then, in the end, choose. That is the actual mechanic of the avatar state, beneath the glowing eyes. The state is the access to the polyphony. The will is the act of choosing inside it. Worth spending a little time on the visual grammar the show uses, because the way the avatar state is animated is doing as much work, sometimes more, than the dialogue around it. The basic visual signature is the white in the eyes, but the show is careful to vary how that white is presented depending on what mode of the state we are in. The brief flares in the early episodes tend to use a soft, almost gauzy glow, as if the light is bleeding outward from inside the body. The sustained merger at the North Pole, in contrast, uses a sharper, harder white, lit from inside a dark wave, the kind of bright that hurts to look at. The locked moments in the third book, when Aang is trying and failing to reach the state, used no white at all. Just the boy's normal gray eyes, sometimes shown in close-up to make sure you notice. In the final activation, the one in the Comet finale, uses the brightest, most fully diffused white in the entire show. Light spilling out of the body in every direction, the four-element sphere as a kind of corona around him. The animators are using the brightness in each scene to tell you how aligned the state is. The tattoos work the same way. Aang's blue arrow tattoos, given to airbending masters in the air nomad tradition once they have demonstrated mastery, run from the crown of his head down the center of his back and out along his arms and legs. They are not just decoration. The show treats them as channels. When the avatar state activates, those channels light up in white, and the brighter the alignment, the more clearly defined the lines. The chakra system Pathic teaches is laid out along those exact lines. The arrow that runs down the center of his back is the spine. The column, the energy, is meant to travel up. The mark on the top of his head is the crown chakra. The marks on his hands and feet are the radiating points where the energy exits the body when he is bending. The tattoos, in other words, are a kind of pre-existing circuit diagram for the energy the state is going to push through him. And the show, by lighting them up, is showing you the circuit firing. There is a quieter visual choice as well, in the framing of the body during the state. Aang, when he is just himself, slouches a little. He sits with his shoulders forward. He fidgets. He smiles. When the state takes him over, the body straightens, the shoulders settle, the chin lifts slightly, the hands move with a different kind of weight. There is a 1,000-year-old being in a child's body, and the body is doing its best to carry the weight. The animators are doing all of this in a few frames, and most viewers register it without consciously noticing it. The state, even when no light is glowing, has a posture. It is the posture of someone much older than the surface of the face would suggest. The sound design contributes its own layer. The avatar state, in most of its activations, is accompanied by a low, sustained note, almost a drone, sometimes joined by a wordless choral pad of voices. When the state speaks, Aang's voice is overlaid with a deeper voice, slightly out of sync with his own. The show uses that doubling sparingly and to great effect. In the second book finale, when Roku speaks through Aang during the crisis at the Temple of the Avatars, you hear a voice that is recognizably Roku's in the same body. In the third book, when Aang has reached his fully integrated state in the final fight, the voice underneath his is older and more layered, less identifiable as any one specific avatar, closer to a chorus in the literal sense, a few voices speaking together. The choice to layer rather than replace is meaningful. The boy is not displaced, he is accompanied. The episode score is also doing patient work. The composers, Jeremy Zuckerman and Benjamin Wynn, working under the name The Track Team, give the avatar state a recurring musical motif. a kind of slow, ascending pad built around long tones. It plays at the iceberg in the first episode. It plays at the Southern Air Temple. It plays at the Siege of the North. It plays in the Avatar State episode. It plays in the catacombs at the moment the chakra is being forced. And it plays in its fullest form in the four-element sphere of the finale. The motif teaches your ear, over the course of 3 books, that this sound means the lineage is in the room. When you hear it, even before you see the eyes, you know what is coming. Hold all of those visual and sonic cues together for a moment, because they make the case for what the Avatar State really is in the show's own grammar. It is not a power-up, it is the arrival of a chorus. The eyes are the announcement, the tattoos are the channel, the voice is the speaker, the drone is the room, the boy is the place where they are gathered. When the state is on, the show wants you to feel that the boy has, briefly, become a meeting hall. Worth pausing, too, on what the state is not. It is not, in any moment, the show actually depicts a permanent transformation. The boy always comes back. It is not, in the original series, a means of communicating with the dead the way a seance might be. The past avatars who appear to him do so in dreams, meditations, and during specific spiritual rituals like the meeting at the Crescent Island Temple. Not because the state itself has rolled them in. It is not a kind of demonic possession because the people speaking through him are him. And it is not, in any episode, a state he can use casually. The show is very careful about how often it activates and how it ends each time, because the writers seem to be aware that overusing the state would defang its emotional weight. They reserve it for moments that matter. By the end of the 3rd book, when the state arrives in full, you have not seen it activated in earnest for weeks of in-story time. The drought makes the arrival mean something. There is also a question worth airing here, gently, about where the Avatar state actually comes from in the show's own internal myth. The original series is, on this point, mostly silent. It tells you what the state can do, what its rules are, who has access to it, and what its limits are. But it does not, in the 3 books of Avatar, The Last Airbender, give you an origin story for the Avatar itself. The cycle simply exists. The lineage simply stretches back. The show implies, in passing, that the Avatar is older than the 4 nations, that the cycle through water, earth, fire, and air has been turning for a very long time, but it never tells you who the first Avatar was, or how the bond between the Avatar and the spirit world was first formed. That story is told several years later in the sequel series, The Legend of Korra. We have to flag clearly that we are crossing into different canon now. The Legend of Korra, while produced by the same creators and treated as part of the larger world, is a separate show, and the cosmology it adds is not, strictly, part of the original Avatar, The Last Airbender. With that flag firmly raised, the relevant story is told in 2 episodes called Beginnings, in which Korra, the next Avatar after Aang, recovers her own buried memories of the first Avatar, and learns how the bond between human and spirit was first made. In that telling, the first Avatar was a man named Wan, the first human to bond with the great spirit Rava, the light spirit of order, in the era before the 4 nations existed, when humans lived on the backs of lion turtles, and the surface of the world was a chaotic mess of warring spirits. Wan bonded with Rava, and as far as fans have pieced together, the permanent fusion was sealed during the celestial alignment called harmonic convergence, a once-in-10,000 years event when the spirit and human worlds align. The bond carried forward into every subsequent reincarnation of his soul. That bond is what we now call the Avatar. The Avatar state, in that framework, is the moment when Rava, the spirit fused into the human soul, comes to the surface and acts through the body. The lineage of past avatars is, in this version, the lineage of all the humans who have shared that single fused soul across thousands of years. The Legend of Korra makes this very explicit in those flashback episodes, and it builds out additional consequences from it later, including a sequence in which the bond between Korra and Rava is severed by a dark spirit, and the connection to all previous avatars before Korra is, in that show's canon, lost. None of that origin or that severance is referenced in the original Avatar, The Last Airbender. The original show treats the Avatar state as a given. The sequel show retroactively explains where the given came from. Both versions can be true at once, depending on which canon you are leaning on, and the question of how to integrate them is one of the genuine puzzles in Avatar fandom. For our purposes tonight, the important thing is to be honest about which show is which. The original series, the one this video is mainly about, does not say that the avatar state is the action of a spirit named Rava. It says that the state is the channeling of past avatars. The two versions are compatible. You can read them as the same thing described from different distances. But when we are talking about Aang's experience of the state, we should stay inside the original show's own language and let the sequel series remain where it belongs as a later addition that recontextualizes but does not replace what the original showed. Hold that distinction in mind because it matters when we come to the most chilling part of the Avatar state's rules, which is what happens if the state itself dies. The original show, in the second book episode where Roku lays out the rules, says clearly that if the Avatar is killed in the state, the reincarnation cycle ends. The Avatar will cease to exist. Not just the current one, the entire line. The show does not elaborate exactly what would happen on a practical level if the world found itself permanently without an avatar, but the implications are not hard to draw. The avatar is the bridge between the human world and the spirit world. The avatar is the one being whose mandate is to keep all four nations in balance. Remove that being permanently, and you have a world without a bridge and without a balancer. The four nations would, in the original show's logic, drift apart, lose their alignment, and likely fall into a kind of permanent imbalance that no leader could fully heal. That is what Azula in the catacombs of Ba Sing Se very nearly achieves. The show, in the back half of the second book, plays the moment with absolute calm and a clear, cold understanding of what is at stake. The girl on the platform of crystal raises one hand. She does not say anything elaborate. She simply lines up the shot and fires. The lightning enters Aang's back exactly at the point where the seventh chakra meets the body, severs his connection in two ways at once, the physical and the spiritual, and would have killed any other avatar in that state outright. The only reason it does not kill him is that Katara, having been given the small vial of spirit oasis water at the end of the first book, uses it in the precise moment that he is still close enough to alive to be brought back. The healing water carries with it a small fraction of the moon and ocean spirit's essence. The show is not subtle about implying that what saves him is not human medicine, but a piece of the spirit world reaching back into him at the last moment. If Katara had not been carrying that vial, or if she had used it earlier, the show would, in its own terms, have ended in the catacombs. There would be no avatar. The chorus would have stopped singing. The lineage, which we have been hearing about for a season and a half, would have died in a green cave in an Earth Kingdom city. The fact that the show goes that close, that it actually puts the death of the cycle on screen as a near miss, is something the writer should be given a great deal of credit for. Most stories with a final battle telegraph that the protagonist will not lose anything irreplaceable on the way there. Avatar takes the protagonist's irreplaceable thing and very nearly takes it. This near miss is, I think, also the moment that secretly answers the question the second book opening had asked. Should Aang enter the Avatar state on demand for predictable fights as the Earth Kingdom general wanted him to? The catacombs are the answer. No, he should not. Not because the state is bad, but because using it in a predictable fight, in a known location against a planned opponent, gives the enemy exactly the timing they need to line up the shot that ends the cycle. The state is too valuable to be predictable with. It must be saved for moments when the alternative is worse. And even then, it must be entered with a clean alignment, not a forced one. The forced opening, the one with the seventh chakra still half blocked, is what gives Azula the window. The show is telling you, in a single bolt of lightning, that the state cannot be hacked. It can only be earned. The third book, then, in all its quiet middle episodes, is the story of the boy earning it. The lightning closes the path. The waiting period that follows, in which Aang lives without the state, gives him the chance to grow the parts of himself that the state was perhaps allowing him to skip. He becomes, in those weeks, a more capable bender on his own terms. He learns firebending from Zuko. He builds tactics. He builds discipline. He grows into a teenager who can fight without the chorus. The state, when it finally returns to a more developed body. The boy who receives it back is more able to hold it than the boy who lost it. The rock that strikes his back at the comet, breaking the lock, is therefore one of the most spiritually rich pieces of staging in the entire show. The rock is, in story terms, a coincidence, a small geological detail in a desperate fight, but the show is doing something subtler with it. The injury that closed the chakra is healed in essence by another precisely placed blow at the same site. The seal was a wound, the release is the wound being broken open. The metaphor is almost grotesque if you sit with it. The boy can have his cosmic power back only because the world hit him in exactly the wrong place a second time. The show is suggesting that great wounds, the truly important ones, do not heal cleanly. They reopen. And sometimes the reopening is the only path back to the self you were before they happened. That is not the kind of metaphor a children's show is usually allowed to land cleanly, and Avatar lands it anyway, because the entire third book has been making the case that what was broken can become whole only by being broken differently. Zuko's arc is the same shape. Katara's arc is the same shape. Toph's arc, in subtler ways, is the same shape. The show seems to believe, at its core, that brokenness is not a problem to be avoided, but a process to be moved through, and that the people who emerge from it intact are not the people who refuse to break, but the people who let the breaking finish. There is a thread worth pulling out that runs through the entire arc of the Avatar state in Aang's story, which is the relationship between control and surrender. In the early episodes, the state activates entirely without Aang's permission. It surges through him in response to grief or terror, and recedes when he is comforted. Through the middle of the show, the state begins to be something he can almost, but not quite, reach on his own. By the end of the second book, in the Catacombs, he is able to begin reaching for it deliberately, although not safely. By the end of the third book, with the chakras open, he can hold it indefinitely and exit it on his own decision. That long arc from surrender to control is the arc of growing up, of becoming the kind of person who can carry your own most powerful tools. The show is not framing control as the goal in itself. It is framing control as the precondition for the choice being the act inside the state to do or not do what the lineage wants you to do. The whole point of the discipline is to make you free to choose. You cannot choose if the tool is using you. That is also why the boy's eventual decision in the comet finale is so important. The state, when it activates in him in full, has its own momentum. The lineage, in chorus, wants Ozai dead. The 4 counselors between them have told him to take the life. He is in the state. The state is, in its mechanical sense, the lineage acting through him. And he, inside the state, says no. He uses the body the lineage is in to do something the lineage did not advise. That is not an act of breaking the state. It is an act of fully inhabiting it. He is more himself inside the state than he has ever been outside it. The course is on, the body is glowing, the elements are spinning, and underneath all of it, the boy is awake and choosing. The discipline Pathak tried to teach him has finally taken hold. He has cleared the path. The energy is flowing. And the boy in the middle of it is sober enough to disagree with his own ancestors. That is, I think, the show's deepest claim about what the Avatar state is for. It is not for winning fights. It is not for ending wars. It is for putting a person in the position where they are powerful enough to fully be themselves at the moment when the consequences are the largest. That is when most people fall back on instinct or doctrine or inherited reflex. The Avatar state is the one place where paradoxically you have the most help, and therefore have to do the most independent work. The chorus is loudest when the choice is hardest. The discipline is to remain you anyway. The boy passes that test in the comet, and the rest of the show, including the closing scene of the series, is the result of his having passed it. Worth lingering while we are here on the relationship between the Avatar state and the spirit world more broadly, because the show treats the two as intimately connected in ways that are easy to take for granted. The Avatar in the show's lore is the bridge between the physical world and the spirit world. The Avatar state, in practice, is the moment when that bridge is briefly walked. When the boy enters the state, he is, in some sense, opening himself to the spirit world in a way that is not available to ordinary benders. Past avatars exist in the spirit world. They reach him through the state. The ocean and moon spirits, when they joined him at the North Pole, did so through the state. The lion turtle, in giving him energy bending, transferred the technique by laying its great forehead against his and lighting up his tattoos, which is, recognizably, the Avatar state engaging with a spirit. The show gives us several episodes that explore this bridge directly, and although the Avatar state is not the central topic in those episodes, its presence is always implied. In a first book episode called Winter Solstice, in 2 parts, Aang travels into the spirit world for the first time to confront the spirit Heibai, a forest spirit that has been driven into a rampage by the burning of its woods by Fire Nation forces. To reach the spirit world, Aang's body falls into a meditative trance, eyes glowing faintly, while his spirit walks the spirit realm. He is, technically, in a partial state. Although the show does not name it as such, the mechanic is more or less that the Avatar is the only being who can willingly cross over. He calms Heibai by recognizing that the great forest spirit's anger is grief, not malice. He restores the connection between the burnt forest and a small bamboo shoot. The spirit calms. The Avatar, having brokered a peace between a spirit and the human world, returns to his body. That episode, although small, is a kind of demonstration that the Avatar's job is not only to fight Fire Nation soldiers. It is to keep the spiritual side of the world from breaking apart from the physical side. The Avatar state, in this sense, is the tool for that job. It is the engagement mode for spirit world business. The second part of that arc, Avatar Roku, takes Aang to a temple on Crescent Island where Roku's spirit can be summoned on the solstice. That is where Roku first appears to him directly, framing the rest of the series with the prophecy that Aang must defeat the Fire Lord before Sazin's comet returns. That meeting is itself a kind of spirit world encounter taking place inside a holy chamber lit by a momentary alignment of light through a carved aperture, and the show treats it with the reverence the appearance deserves. A different spirit world journey comes later, in the first book finale, when Aang travels to the realm of Ko, the face stealer, an old spirit who lives at the base of a great tree, and steals the faces of anyone who shows him expression while he speaks. Aang has to learn to keep his face perfectly still in front of Ko, ask the question he needs to ask, and leave without offering the face stealer any reaction. The encounter is one of the eeriest sequences in the show, and it works because it shows you that the spirit world is genuinely dangerous, not in the way a battle is dangerous, but in the way a fairy tale is dangerous, with rules you do not understand and consequences that are not graded. The Avatar's bridging role is, in part, the work of learning those rules on behalf of the rest of humanity, so that humans do not lose their faces. The Avatar state, then, is less a battlefield weapon than people sometimes remember it being. Its most concrete demonstrations are spiritual. The full merger at the North Pole was with a spirit. The energy-bending gift was from a spirit. The bridge to past avatars goes through the spirit world. Even Aang's eventual mastery in the comet finale comes after a long, quiet conversation with the lion turtle, a spirit older than the war. The state, viewed this way, is the means by which the Avatar conducts diplomacy with beings that are older and stranger than nations. Its destructive applications are, in the show's grammar, almost incidental to its primary purpose. The body bends, the spirit speaks. The state is the moment when the speaking is loud enough that the world has to listen. A reading has become common in fan discussion over the years that is also worth holding open. The reading that the Avatar state is, among other things, an animation of trauma. This is interpretation, not canon, and the show does not name it. But the way the state activates in Aang in the early books against his will in response to grief and helplessness looks remarkably like the way dissociation looks in younger people who have lived through impossible events. The body goes still, the eyes go elsewhere. Some other version of the self comes forward to manage what the surface self cannot manage. The body acts at scales the surface self could not act at. And when the episode ends, the surface self comes back, often with no memory of the precise details, often in someone's arms, often surprised by what the other self did. That is not a perfect map. The Avatar state is fictional, and it is, in its own grammar, also a real mechanic with rules. But the resonance is hard to miss, and I think it is part of why the state resonates with viewers who watched the show as children. They were watching in a culture that did not yet have good vocabulary for what was happening. An animation of what it can feel like to leave your body during the worst thing and have something else handle it. Aang, in the early books, is processing the genocide of his entire civilization, and the way his body manages that grief is, in part, by handing the wheel over to something older than him. The state, on a metaphorical level, is the older part of you that holds the steering wheel when the younger part of you cannot. You can press the reading further if you want. The boy spent 100 years frozen in ice, dissociated from his own century, after being told he was the Avatar at an age too young to absorb the news. He woke into a world in which everyone he loved was dead. The state, every time it activates in the first book, is helping him survive moments that would otherwise destroy him. By the end of the second book, when he tries to force the state open, the show is, in this reading, depicting the failure mode of dissociation, the moment when you cannot use the coping mechanism at will because the coping mechanism is not a tool, it is a part of you. You cannot order yourself to feel less. You cannot order yourself into the state in the way the general or Aang himself sometimes wished he could. The state arrives when it arrives, until you do the slow spiritual work that lets it arrive on call. By the third book, when the state is locked, the show is, in this reading, depicting recovery. The boy has to live without the coping mechanism. He has to face the world in his own body, with his own grief, on his own terms. And the work of doing that is the work that, eventually, makes the state usable again. The final activation in this reading is not the return of the dissociation. It is the return of a much older, much more integrated relationship between the boy and the lineage. He is no longer being protected from the moment by the chorus. He is choosing, with the chorus, to be fully present. The light is not hiding him. The light is showing him. That is, again, interpretation. The show does not say in dialogue that the state is a trauma response or a dissociative episode, but the structure of Aang's arc through the state maps onto the structure of recovery from severe early grief almost exactly, and I think the writers were doing this on purpose. The fact that they let the metaphor sit gently without naming it is part of why it lands. The boy in the iceberg is, in some senses, the boy in the body. The lineage in the eyes is, in some senses, the part of him that survived. The release, at the end, is the part of him that learns to live with the survival without being defined by it. One more reading worth airing has to do with the show's portrayal of the state as a generational responsibility rather than a personal gift. The Avatar is not just one person at one time. The Avatar is, in cosmic terms, the same single soul moving through history. Aang inherits the body of that soul for one lifetime. Roku held it before him, Kyoshi before that, Kuruk before her, Yangchen before him. The state, then, is the moment when the inheritance becomes visible in the room. It is the family in the doorway. It is the lineage standing behind the boy. It is the past telling the present that it is not alone. That framing changes how you read Aang's hesitations across the show. When he is reluctant to use the state, he is not refusing power. He is refusing to fully inhabit the inheritance, because the inheritance is heavy, and he is, at the start, 12. Over the course of 3 books, he grows into the inheritance the way someone grows into a family role over a lifetime. The state, by the end, is not a thing happening to him. It is a thing he is doing on behalf of the people who came before. The arc in that reading is one of generational reconciliation. The boy, by the comet, has accepted that he is, in some sense, all of them. The state, in his final use of it, is the family acting through him with his consent. There is a subset of episodes in the show that gives you a different angle on the state, the moments when Aang glimpses, in dream or vision, a darker version of what he might become inside it. The opening episode of the second book, the one titled The Avatar State, is the clearest example. While Aang is being pressured by the Earth Kingdom General to weaponize the state, the show cuts several times to visions inside Aang's head. One of them shows him, eyes glowing in the center of a destroyed city, his hands raised, the world burning around him. He is unmistakably in the state in that vision, but the use is not heroic. He is the cause of the destruction. The animators are showing the boy what the state could look like, in the wrong context. If it were used the way the general wants it used, the boy recoils. It is a brief sequence, only a few seconds, but it sits in the back of your head for the rest of the show. It tells you that the state is not morally neutral in its operator. The same eyes that lit up to save the Northern Water Tribe can, in another scenario, light up to burn an Earth Kingdom city. The chorus does what the body lets it do. If the body is in fear or in rage, the chorus will go in that direction. If the body is in alignment, the chorus will go in that direction. The state is, in this sense, a mirror amplified. Whoever you are at the moment of activation, the state makes you that, only larger. The boy is right to be afraid of that mirror. The boy is also right to keep working on what he wants to see in it. There is a deeper plot question this same visionary sequence raises, which the show, to its credit, does not entirely resolve. If the state is the chorus speaking through the boy, can the chorus go wrong? Can one of the past avatars in the line behind him have left a residue of anger or vengeance that the boy might unwittingly channel? The show implies, in the way Kyoshi speaks to him, and in the way Kuruk regrets his own passivity, that the past avatars are not uniformly serene. They are people. They had bad days. The state, on a given day, might amplify the wrong piece of their inheritance, depending on which voice in the chorus is loudest. That uncertainty is part of what makes the state both powerful and terrifying. You are not just borrowing skill, you are borrowing temperament. And temperament in the room of a 1,000-year-long lineage is a crowded thing. There is also a quiet structural question that the show raises and then partly answers in the third book, which is the question of what happens to the Avatar state during the Day of Black Sun, the solar eclipse that becomes one of the major set pieces of that book. During the eclipse, firebenders lose their bending entirely because the sun is the source of their bending. The Day of Black Sun is, in story terms, the hero's plan to invade the Fire Nation capital during an hours-long window in which Ozai cannot bend. There is also, implied in earlier dialogue, an equivalent for waterbending during a lunar eclipse when the moon, the source of waterbending, is darkened. The Avatar, who has access to all four elements, is in a strange position during those eclipses. The show does not make a major plot point of it, but the implication is that during a solar eclipse, the Avatar's firebending is gone, and during a lunar eclipse, the Avatar's waterbending is gone, the same as any other bender of those nations. The state itself, though, the channeling of past Avatars, seems to be unaffected. Aang, during the Day of Black Sun, is not in the Avatar state because his block has not yet been broken. But there is no implication that even if it had been, the eclipse would have prevented him from entering it. The state, in the show's logic, is a spiritual access to the lineage, not an elemental access to the sun or the moon. The chorus does not need the sky in the right configuration to speak. The body needs only the alignment of the chakras and the will to hold them open. That distinction matters because it tells you that the Avatar state is, in the show's cosmology, fundamentally different from regular bending. Regular bending is elemental. It depends on sun, moon, earth, and air. The Avatar state is spiritual. It depends on the lineage and the alignment of the body that holds it. Cut the sun, and Aang loses one of his four tools. Cut the lineage, and Aang loses everything. The two systems run on different fuel, and the show is careful to keep them separate in its rules. That same separation is what makes Aang's relationship to the state across the show feel coherent. He does not, as a rule, use the state to bend the elements. He uses the elements with his own skills. He uses the state to bend, in some sense, the lineage itself. It is the one tool only he can use, and it is the tool he uses the least. The economy of its appearances by the time you get to the end of the show is part of what makes the show feel so disciplined. Most fantasy series, given a power as visually arresting as glowing eyes, would put it in every other fight. Avatar gives it to him only a handful of times across more than 60 episodes. The decision to be miserly with it is what makes it land as miracle when it arrives in the comet. It is worth looking briefly at the closing image of the original series before we leave the canonical text behind, because it is the show's last word on the Avatar state without saying the state's name. The final episode ends with the war over, with Zuko taking the throne as a new kind of Fire Lord, with Aang and Katara sharing a kiss on the balcony of a tea house in the new spring of the world. The boy is not in the state in that scene. The eyes are not glowing. The tattoos are quiet. But behind him, in the architecture of the post-war world, is the visible result of his having chosen what to do with the state when it mattered. The Earth King is back. The Fire Nation is going to begin its long process of reform. The Avatar, as a concept, is intact. The cycle continues. The chorus is silent for the moment, the way a choir is silent between performances. The boy is just a boy again. The original series, by ending on that quiet image, is telling you that the Avatar state is not the point. The point is the person who carries it, the people who carry that person, and the life that is possible once both have done the work of holding each other. The state is a tool. The tool was used. The tool is put down. The person remains. A note now about the show's afterlife, because the Avatar state is a piece of mechanics that did not stay locked inside the original series. The franchise extended through a series of graphic novels, written and published in the years after the original animated run, that continue Aang's story in the years between the original series and The Legend of Korra. We have to flag again that the comics exist as their own canon, separate from the animated series, and that interpretations of the Avatar state that depend on comic-only events should be read with that in mind. The general arc of the comics, in broad strokes, has Aang continuing to work as the Avatar in the post-war world, using the state sparingly, dealing with the Fire Nation colonies that were established during the war, building the foundations of a multinational city that will later become the setting of The Legend of Korra, and starting a family with Katara. The state, in those years, becomes more or less a tool he uses as needed. on the rare occasions when the situation requires it. The comics, in their handling, do not contradict the original series rules. They simply extend the life of the carrier. The sequel series, The Legend of Korra, is again its own canon, and the most important thing it does for our purposes is recontextualize the state in two ways. First, it provides the origin story of the Avatar through the Lion Turtle era and the bond with Raava that we covered earlier. Second, it shows what happens when the bond is severed by a dark spirit in the second season of the sequel, an event that breaks the connection between Korra and all previous avatars, including Aang. After that event, in the world of the sequel, Korra cannot draw on the chorus the way Aang could. She is the first avatar of a new line, with no inheritance behind her, no voices in the chorus other than her own. The avatar state, in her case, remains available, because Raava is still bonded to her soul, but it is a leaner state than Aang ever knew. There is no Roku in her ear, there is no Kyoshi behind her. There is only the spirit of light and the body of the avatar. That severance is one of the more controversial choices in the sequel series, and it is not part of the original show. But it gives you, in a strange way, a useful contrast that clarifies what the state was in Aang's case. The state for Aang was always partly the chorus. When you remove the chorus, as Korra eventually has to live with, the state is still a state, but it is a different state. Less full, less guided, more lonely. Aang did not know he was the last avatar in a line who could hear the chorus, because the line continued in the sequel series until it was broken. But the state, as he experienced it, was a full polyphony. The sequel series, by showing what happens when the polyphony stops, lets you appreciate, in retrospect, how thick the music in Aang's head must have been. We are going to bring this back in a minute to the experience of watching the original series, but it is worth keeping the chorus image in mind. The avatar state in Aang's lifetime was always at least 1,000-year-long ensemble. The eyes were the spotlights. The tattoos were the stage. The boy was the singer who had been given a part in a piece much larger than himself, and who by the end of the show had learned to perform his part without drowning out the others, or being drowned out by them. The show also treats the avatar state in moments that are not about combat at all. There are several smaller activations across the 3 books that the action-centered summaries often skip over, and they are worth naming, because they tell you something about the texture of how the state operates outside of crisis. There is, for example, the small moment late in the 2nd book where Aang, atop a flying creature, accesses a piece of the state's vision in order to navigate. There are moments in his meditations in the 3rd book where his eyes flicker without fully igniting. There is the brief activation in the 1st book during his encounter with the Fire Nation general in the Spirit World's edges, a sequence in which he uses the state to push past a barrier he could not push past as a child. None of these are big set pieces. They are texture. They are the state as a routine spiritual function, not as a once-an-episode spectacle. The show, by including them, makes the state feel like a real piece of the boy's biology, rather than a switch that gets flipped only when the score demands it. Those small uses are also reminders that the avatar state, in the show's grammar, is not separate from the avatar. It is the avatar's nature surfacing, briefly, into visibility. The rest of the time, the nature is there, but it is below the waterline. The boy is always the avatar. The state is the moment when you can see it. The arc of his discipline, over 3 books, is the arc of learning to surface the nature when he needs it, and to keep it below the waterline when he does not. By the comet, he can do both at will. By the end of the series, he can live a daily life as a teenager in the post-war world without the state intruding, while still knowing it is there if the next emergency requires it. The state has become, in his hands, what it was always meant to be in the hands of a master avatar. A discipline, not a possession. Going back, for a moment, to that scene at the volcano where Roku dies. The reason that sequence matters so much for understanding the avatar state is that it shows you what the state looks like in its most fully integrated form in an avatar at the end of life. Roku is old. He has been the avatar for decades. He has mastered all 4 elements. He has practiced with the state, as far as we are told, for his entire adult life. And on the day of his island's eruption, you see him entering the state quickly, calmly, without the fear or the hesitation that defines Aang's early activations. The eyes light. The tattoos, if they were on him, would be a different story, but Roku does not have the airbender tattoos because he was not air nomad. so the visual signature is more limited to the eyes and the surrounding aura. He uses the state to hold back lava, redirect ash, protect his neighbors. It is exactly the kind of use a fully mastered avatar would have for the state. Defensive, restorative, in service of his community. What makes the volcano sequence devastating is what happens around it. Roku, deep in the use of the state, is exposed in exactly the way Roku himself will later warn Aang about. He is too focused on the eruption to notice that Sozin has arrived. Sozin, his oldest friend, sees Roku at the limit of his strength, breathing in volcanic gas, his concentration entirely on the lava, and chooses, in a moment that the show plays with absolute coldness, not to help him. He turns. He flies away. He leaves the most powerful avatar of his generation to die alone on a smoldering island. The gas takes Roku before the state fades, and that, in the show's logic, is what triggers the rebirth. The cycle continues. A new air nomad child is born somewhere in the world. That child is, eventually, Aang. A small but important detail in that sequence is one the show is careful about. Roku does not die in a fight. He dies of inhalation, with the state still partly on his own island, surrounded by ash. The state did not save him because the state is not, contrary to popular reading, a guarantee of survival. It is an amplification. He was already at the edge of his physical capacity before the state activated. The state let him push past the edge for a few more minutes, but it could not give him lungs that were not full of ash. The lineage cannot fix biology. It can only let you do, briefly, more than your biology was meant for. The eventual cost is paid by the body, regardless. That is a quiet but important rule about the state. It does not heal the carrier, it does not restore the body. It amplifies whatever the body is currently capable of, sometimes by enormous factors, but always with a corresponding cost. Aang, after his early activations, is shown exhausted. After the siege of the North Merger, he collapses. After the catacombs, he nearly dies. The state has weight, and the weight is paid by the small body that carries the chorus. The show does not always show you that cost directly, but it is implied in every recovery sequence. You do not walk out of the state untouched. That cost extends, by some readings, into the longer life of the avatar. There is a recurring observation in supplementary material and in fan discussion that avatars who use the state extensively tend to die younger than non-avatar humans, simply because the body is not built to be a vehicle for that much energy that often. The show itself does not make this claim explicitly, and we should not pretend that it does. But the pattern of avatar lifespans across the lineage that the show gives us, with Roku dying at an advanced but not extreme age, Kyoshi being a notable exception at over 200 years old, Kuruk dying young, and so on, suggests that the state's relationship to lifespan is not uniform. The lineage is, in this reading, generous and demanding at the same time. It gives the carrier access to enormous power. It takes back, in return, a portion of the years that power was given for. The exchange is not even, and it is not always fair. But it is the exchange. It is worth turning while we are on the cost of the state to the body Aang ends up with by the end of the third book. He is small for his age, partly because of the 100 years he spent in a state of suspended aging in the iceberg, partly because of the months of recovery he spent in coma after the lightning strike. His back carries a scar at the 7th chakra point. His airbender tattoos have not faded. He walks, for a long stretch of the back half of the third book, with a slight hitch that the animators draw into him deliberately, especially during recovery sequences. The state has touched his body in ways that are visible. The audience knows this without being told. The cost is in the silhouette of the boy himself. When he walks out of the comet fight at the end of the series, having used the state at its fullest, he is on his feet. He is not in another coma. He is not, by the time you see him at the tea house, visibly damaged. But the show is implying throughout the final episodes that the cost is being paid in some less visible currency. He is more serious in the final scenes than he was in the first episode. He is more capable of stillness. He looks older in the eyes than the years should account for. The state has aged him in a way that is hard to articulate but easy to feel. He is, by the end, the kind of teenager who has seen things. The kind who has held the chorus inside himself for an afternoon and is going to spend the rest of his life integrating what the chorus said while it was in there. In the same breath, the show does not present this aging as tragic. It presents it as growth. The boy at the start was incapable of taking the role he had been given. The teenager at the end has taken it. The cost is part of the taking. There is no version of this story where he gets to keep the cheerfulness of the first episode and also fix the world. The world is fixed at a price. The price is being paid in him. He does not seem by the end to regret paying it. The Aang of the closing image is calm. He is happy. He is with the girl he loves. And he is, almost certainly, going to be the Avatar for a long time yet, and the state is going to be a part of his life for as long as he is. One final scene from the third book is worth dwelling on in the second-to-last episode, in which Aang has gone, by himself, to a strange foggy island he has never seen before, exhausted, conflicted, unsure whether to kill Ozai or not. He sits alone on a stone shelf above the sea, and the camera lingers on him for a long time. He is not in the Avatar state. He is just a boy who has been carrying too much for too long, and who has been given counsel that conflicts with what he believes, and who does not know what to do. The fog rolls in around him. He falls asleep. The island, of course, turns out to be the lion turtle, but before that reveal, the show gives you an extended shot of the boy at his most exhausted, his most alone, and his most receptive. He has been emptied of certainty. He has been worn down by the Lineage's advice. He is open. That openness is, by some readings, the precondition for the gift the lion turtle gives him. He could not have received energy bending earlier in the show. He was too busy. He was too convinced of his own answers. He had to be reduced to a sleeping child on the back of an unrecognized spirit before the gift could arrive. The state, in its way, has prepared him for that openness. The discipline of carrying it has hollowed out a space in him where new spiritual knowledge can land. The lion turtle, in this reading, is not interrupting the lineage. The lineage is making the lion turtle's gift possible. The chorus, by exhausting the boy, has cleared the space for the older song. That is, I think, one of the most spiritually elegant pieces of plotting in the whole show. The Avatar state is, in this reading, both the problem and the preparation. It is the thing that has made him so tired. It is the thing that has emptied him. It is also the thing that has trained him to receive what was given. The boy who falls asleep on the foggy island is the boy who can wake up and hear what the lion turtle has to say, because he has nothing left in him to argue with it. That emptiness, the kind of emptiness only an inheritor of a 1,000-year-long lineage knows how to be, is the condition of the gift. A further question worth thinking about has to do with what the Avatar's role is when the state is not in play. Most of the show, as we have noted, depicts Aang doing the work of the Avatar without the chorus active. He brokers small pieces. He mediates disputes between benders and ordinary people. He learns the cultures of nations he was not born into. He visits the Earth Kingdom city of Omashu and is recognized by an old friend who is now an old man. He visits a swamp tribe in the foggy swamp who give him a vision of a girl he has not yet met. He visits the Fire Nation in disguise and goes to a school where he learns, very gently, that even Fire Nation children are children. The state is dormant for most of these scenes. The Avatar, as a role, is active throughout them. That ratio is important to keep in view, because it tells you what the Avatar state is for in proportion to the rest of the Avatar's life. The state is the tool of last resort. The relationships are the daily work. The boy is doing his job mostly by being present in the rooms of the world and making the people in those rooms feel seen. The state is what he reaches for when presence is not enough. The fact that the show spends so much more time on the presence than on the state, by orders of magnitude, is itself a comment on what the writers consider the Avatar to be. The Avatar is not a weapon. The Avatar is a kind of cultural bridge with a weapon underneath it, available only when the bridges have failed. That framing also explains the broader political failure that the show is dealing with, the failure that made the war possible in the first place. Sozin's expansion was not stopped at its early stages because the Avatar of that generation, Roku, was too close to him personally to act decisively. The chorus in Roku's body did not push him to be a stranger to his oldest friend. The relationship that was supposed to be a bridge between the Fire Lord and the Avatar became a vulnerability. The Avatar was, in some sense, asking the chorus to do something the chorus could not do for him, which was to allow him to be both a friend and a balancer at the same time. The two roles, in that case, could not coexist. The state is not by itself enough to bridge that contradiction. The bridges have to be built and rebuilt every day in the body of the carrier, and the carrier has to be honest with himself about what those bridges can hold. Aang, by the third book, has learned this. He cannot be Ozai's friend. He could not have been Ozai's friend. The relationship that was supposed to be a bridge between him and the Fire Nation is, in his case, the relationship with Zuko, who eventually becomes a friend and ally because Zuko himself does the long work of becoming a person worth that friendship. The two of them, Avatar and Fire Lord, are going to spend the rest of their lives rebuilding what their predecessors broke. The Avatar state is going to help when it can. The bulk of the work is going to be in the rooms, the conversations, the years. One of the more interesting structural questions about the state is also worth holding open, which is whether other avatars and other generations had different access patterns to it than Aang did. The show only really shows us, in any depth, Aang's relationship to the state. The other avatars are visible mostly as counselors or in brief flashbacks. But the show implies in several places that different avatars have different relationships with the state, based on personality, training, and culture. Yang Chen, the air nomad before Kuruk, is implied to have used the state with extraordinary frequency and skill, possibly because the air nomad's spiritual discipline she was raised in oriented her toward the state's clearer activation. Roku is shown using it relatively rarely. Kuruk, by some implications, used it more than he should have and was paying a personal cost for it. Kyoshi used it for major acts of reshaping the world. The state, in the Lineage's collective history, has been used very differently depending on who was holding it. Aang's use of it, by the end of the third book, is unusual in that he uses it in the comet finale not to kill but to spare. That is, as far as the show indicates, a use the Lineage has not seen before. The four counselors all advised killing. The lion turtle gave him the option to spare. The boy, by combining the lion turtle's gift with the Avatar state, has created a new use case for the state. One in which the state's power is channeled into an act of spiritual rather than physical force, and the result is the unbending of a tyrant rather than the killing of him. The state, in his hands, has become something the chorus did not yet know it could be. The next avatar in the cycle is going to inherit a chorus that includes Aang, and Aang is going to have a story to tell the next one about an option the previous ones did not have. That is one of the loveliest implications of the show's ending, and I do not think the show is unaware of it. The Lineage is by definition a learning organization. Each avatar adds to the chorus what they learned in their generation. Aang adds energy bending. Aang adds the choice to spare. Aang adds the moral conviction of an air nomad raised among monks. The chorus, after his lifetime, is fuller than it was before. Korra, generations later in the sequel series, will lose access to that chorus, which is its own tragedy, but the chorus continues to exist in the spirit world, and the show implies, even in the sequel, that the lineage of past avatars goes on existing, even when individual avatars cannot reach it. Aang is in some sense still in the chorus. He is just not always heard. That image, the boy who once carried the chorus now sitting inside it for everyone who comes after, is a fitting close for what the avatar state really means. The state, in its deepest sense, is membership. It is the membership of every individual avatar in a larger thing that is older than any of them. When the eyes glow, the membership is visible. When the eyes are quiet, the membership is still there, just less visible. Aang, by the end of his life, will, in this reading, have spent decades helping the chorus he once feared to live up to its best self. And when he dies, in the eventual interval between his story and Korra's, he will join the chorus permanently, and a new child will be born somewhere in the world with the lineage humming faintly behind their eyes, waiting for someone to ask them what they fear. That continuity is the show's quietest claim about what the avatar state means. It is not only an action that happens in fight scenes. It is the visible part of a continuous spiritual presence that has been going on for a very long time. The fight scenes are the moments when you can see it. The rest of the time, it is just the air in the room. One more reading worth airing before we close tracks with what I think the show was always saying, even when it was being a children's show on a Saturday morning cable network. The avatar state is, in its deepest sense, the image of how a person carries the past without being destroyed by it. The Boy in the Iceberg lost his entire civilization. The boy in the southern air temple lost his teacher. The boy in the catacombs nearly lost his own life and the lineage with it. The boy at the volcano is the descendant of an avatar who watched his oldest friend let him die. The lineage that Aang has inherited is built out of unbearable losses, large and small, by people who did not have the luxury of not being the avatar. And the state, when he finally masters it, is the moment when he can hold all of those losses without being held by them. The chorus is loud. The chorus is grieving. The chorus, in some of its voices, is angry. The boy, inside the chorus, holds them all and remains himself. That is, I think, the deepest claim the show is making about what it means to grow up in a broken world. You do not get to escape what came before you. You do not get to leave the lineage behind. But you can, if you do the work, become the kind of person who carries the lineage without being deformed by it. You can choose, inside it, who you are going to be. The state is the picture of that choice in its most extreme form. But the choice itself is available in less dramatic forms to anyone who has inherited a family, a culture, a history, a loss. The state, by that reading, is the show's gift to its audience as much as it is its gift to Aang. It is the image of what carrying the past, well, looks like. You glow. You do not erase yourself. You do not erase them. You stand in the middle of the inheritance and act with everything they gave you, and you remain you. That is, I think, why the state has stayed in viewers' memories so vividly for so long. Most fantasy power-up sequences are about transforming into someone better. The avatar state is about becoming, briefly and completely, every version of yourself at once, and still choosing what to do. If you go back and rewatch the show as an adult, knowing where everything is heading, the avatar state scenes play differently than they did the first time. The first watch, the state is mostly the thing that solves problems. The eyes glow, the danger ends, the boy comes back. On the second watch, you start to notice how much fear there is around each activation. The faces of his friends, when his eyes start to light up, are not the faces of people watching a victory. They are the faces of people watching someone they love lose touch with himself, possibly for the last time. Katara's expression, in particular, across the early books, is consistently worried rather than reassured. She knows what the state has cost him before. She knows what it could cost him again. The hugs at the end of each activation are not celebratory. They are relieved. The boy came back this time. He might not, the next time. On a third watch, the state starts to feel less like a power and more like a recurring event in the life of a person living with something serious. You begin to track the small details. The breath he takes before he sits down to meditate. The way he holds his hands when he is trying to reach the chorus and cannot. The way he does not talk about the state to his friends unless he absolutely has to. The way the state is, in some sense, the most private thing about him, and the way his loved ones, particularly Katara, have learned to be careful around the topic. The show, on a third watch, reveals that the state is also a piece of intimacy. The thing his closest people know about him that the rest of the world does not. That intimacy is part of why his recoveries, in their arms, hit so hard. They are not saving him from a generic monster. They are saving him from a thing only they have learned to recognize. That care, in the writing, was not accidental. The creators, Michael Dante DiMartino and Brian Konietzko, have spoken in interviews and behind-the-scenes material about the deliberate work that went into making the Avatar state feel weighty rather than fun. The team wanted to avoid the trope of the protagonist whose power-up grows in scale every episode until it feels meaningless. They wanted, instead, to keep the state rare, costly, and tied to the boy's spiritual development. The animation studio they worked with, in coordination with the production team, gave the state a distinct visual treatment in each major appearance, so that no two activations would feel identical. The reuse is therefore minimal. Every time you see the state, the show is doing something specific with it. A related production note matters about the Chakra episode itself. Pathik's teaching, as far as fans have pieced together from behind-the-scenes interviews, was researched and built in consultation with people who actually knew the yogic and Hindu material the system was being drawn from. The names of the chakras, the colors, the positions, and the emotional knots associated with each are largely consistent with real tradition. The show is doing more than wallpaper. It is bringing a real spiritual framework into the center of its mechanics and treating it with respect rather than as decoration. The Avatar state, by being built on top of this framework, is structurally legible in a way that very few fantasy power systems are. You know how it works, you know why it does not work. You know what it would take to make it work again. That clarity of mechanic is part of why the state has held up so well across 2 decades. A small, lovely production detail is worth mentioning about the voice acting. Aang in the original series is voiced by Zach Tyler Eisen, who was a child himself when he recorded the role. The Avatar state voice work, in most of its layered moments, is built by mixing his voice with the voices of other actors playing past avatars. Roku is voiced, by most accounts, by James Garrett, with a deeper, more deliberate tone. Kyoshi is voiced, as far as fans have pieced together, by Jennifer Hale, with a quiet steel in it. Kuruk and Yangchen are voiced by other guest actors whose names tend to be cited inconsistently across fan references, but each of them brings a distinct vocal weight to their counsel. The layering of those voices in the state's activations is, in some scenes, a literal mixing of those takes into one sustained vocal performance. The chorus you hear in those moments is, in production terms, a chorus. The show built the sound by stacking voices that were performed by separate actors. The result is uncanny in a way that no single performance could have produced. One related question is worth airing about the relationship between the Avatar's role and the 4 nations themselves, because the Avatar state is built into a structure that is older than any of them. The 4 nations, in the show's cosmology, are the 4 cultures that grew up around the 4 bending disciplines, each one rooted in the people who first learned to manipulate their corresponding element. The Avatar, in this cosmology, is the only person who can bend all 4, because the Avatar is the spiritual descendant of the first human who held that connection. The state, by extension, is the moment when all 4 nations, in some sense, are visible in one body. The chorus is not just a chorus of avatars, it is a chorus of cultures. You can press that reading to find one of the show's central political claims. The Avatar state is the antithesis of imperial conquest. The state is the lived insistence that the 4 nations belong to one another, that the bending traditions are sibling disciplines, that no one element is supposed to dominate the others. Sozin's expansion and Ozai's planned genocide of the Earth Kingdom are both attempts to collapse that balance into one element. The Avatar, in the Lineage's deepest function, is the living refusal of that collapse. The state, when it activates, is the embodied form of that refusal. The 4 elements spinning around Aang in the final fight are not just a visual flex. They are the 4 nations refusing, through him, to be reduced to one. That is, in part, why the choice to spare Ozai matters so much. Killing Ozai, in some sense, would be performing the same act of elemental dominance, fire ending fire, that Ozai was trying to use against the Earth Kingdom. Sparing Ozai by unbending him, by reaching into his spirit and removing his connection to fire, is a more elemental kind of justice. It is not the world taking a life. It is the world taking back what the man had used to harm it. The bending he forfeits is the connection between him and the element that defined him. He keeps his body. He loses the means of doing what he was doing with it. That is, in the show's political vision, what justice between nations looks like. You do not eliminate the people. You eliminate the imbalance. In this reading, there is a real argument the show is making about what the Avatar state is at its highest function, which is the moment when the Lineage acts in its proper role as a balancer rather than as a champion of any one side. Aang, in the state in the final fight, has access to the chorus and to the gift of the lion turtle at the same time. He uses both, in combination, to take an act of imbalance and rebalance it. That is the deepest competence of the Avatar. The Lineage in him has become the keeper of the balance, not the avenger of the wrongs that broke it. The eyes glowing white are, in that final scene, the eyes of a world that is trying to right itself, through a single boy who has agreed to let it do its work through his hands. It is a remarkably patient claim for a children's show to make. Most stories of this kind end with the villain dead and the kingdom safe. Avatar ends with the villain alive, but defanged, and the kingdom safe because the structure that made him possible has been undone. The Avatar state is the tool that did the undoing. The state, in that sense, is not a finale weapon. It is a finale resolution. And it leaves the show in a position where the next generation, the next series, the next boy or girl who carries the chorus, has a model for what the state can do that previous generations did not have. Aang has given the lineage a new option. The chorus after him has a new color in its sound. We are nearly at the end of what I want to say tonight, and I want to circle back before we close to the question we started with. What is the Avatar state? Really, in the show's own grammar, it is the visible form of a 1,000-year-long inheritance acting through a small body. It is a tool of last resort, a power of cosmic scale, a vulnerability that, if killed, would end the lineage forever. It is the moment when the past comes forward into the present and asks the present to do something the present cannot do alone. It is, in its deep